What is learned helplessness and what can it teach us about depression and even anxiety? Learned helplessness was a theory that was discovered by Martin Seligman and his associates. It was actually discovered by accident. What they were studying was dogs' responses. I guess that was the cool thing to do back then. Not so cool now. The study was a bit more broad, but we'll make it simple. The fascinating part of the study was that they took a group of dogs and they had them in a cage. The floor would become electrified, so giving the dog a shock. Not fatal, but uncomfortable. And so what would happen is when the dog would push a lever, then the shock would stop. And this was great. They learned it and they were able to turn it off and they learned. But now what made it interesting is when the scientists made it so the lever didn't work. And so then what would happen is the dog would push the lever, nothing would happen. And after a while, they would just kind of huddle up in a corner and just whine because they were being hurt and they couldn't do anything about it. And so now what they did later is they took these dogs and put them with other dogs who the lever always worked for them. And so then you had two different dogs, again, simplified. One dog was in the situation where anytime they pushed the lever, it worked and they were able to turn off the grate and they were good. And so then they took the other dog that whenever they pushed the lever, then things weren't good. They just kept on getting shocked. And they put them both in the same cage. Actually, I think they put them in a cage where there was a divider so that both dogs could see each other, but it didn't affect their grate or their floor. And so what happened is the dog who had always been able to push the lever and things went okay, when the shock started, he got up, he pushed the lever, boom, done. But the dog who the lever didn't work for them, then when that happened, when the floor started shocking him, he just huddled down in the corner and whined, even though he saw that someone else had success. Now, what do we learn from that? Well, what we learn is that this is true in people as well. When people receive, we can call them electric shocks for everyday life, whether that be going to school or whether that be a home life or whether that be your career, whenever you have something in your life that you are trying to do, and if you're receiving electric shocks from it, or maybe being bullied, or maybe your family life isn't as healthy as you would like, or perhaps you're trying to improve your career, but there's always some sort of kickback and some push and something that's making it so that it just doesn't work out. Well, that's similar to the dog who gets the shocks and then can't stop them. And so what it does is in a lot of people, it can cause learned helplessness, where you just learn over time that it doesn't matter what you do because you're gonna be hurt from it. Things aren't gonna work out for you. And now this is a problem because people who experience learned helplessness, then this can also lead to depression and anxiety, because what happens is instead of being able to have a positive attitude and saying, we can do this. I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to talk to this person. I'm going to make this happen. Instead, what they have learned over time is if I try, I get hurt and I don't want to hurt anymore. So keep this in mind when you deal with people are you being an electric grate for somebody? Are you shocking somebody? Are you hurting someone who's just trying? Or will you be able to be the lever that actually helps? Will you be able to relieve the pain of somebody? If you see someone at school, someone who's maybe they're a little bit more weird, a little more awkward, they're not quite socially acceptable, if you would use that term, they're just weird. Imagine that they're that dog in that cage who it seems like every time they try, they get shocked. Wouldn't you want to take the dog out of the cage? Okay, well then why won't you do it for a person in your school or a person in your family? If you're seeing someone who just seems like they keep on getting shocked, then take them out, help them, be a friend to them, talk to them. Sure, you saying hi to somebody in the hallway might not change their life and make some magic difference, but it will at least be one example that somebody sees them and somebody knows that they're there. What can you do if you see someone who's suffering? Well, just make an effort to talk to them, make an effort to let them know that you're there for them. Just say, hey, you know what? If you ever need to talk, I got you. But what if you yourself are struggling with learned helplessness? Well, there's a lot of different things you can do. Number one, I would recommend therapy. I think therapy helps everybody, so there shouldn't be some stigma around it. Therapy is good for everybody. I've done it myself and it's awesome. I love therapy, it's fantastic. But what else? Well, you can do things that you can control. Part of learned helplessness is a feeling of loss of control or lack of control. So there's things you can control in life. You can control when you wake up. You can control your exercise habits. You can control your eating habits. And now I do say those all to some degree because there's a lot of habit that gets involved in our exercise habits and our eating habits. But over time you can improve those. And I'm not saying if you're eating donuts 7 days a week, which I think sounds awesome off the record, but if you're doing that, then you can switch it to be 6 days a week and then work your way to 5 days a week. And you just make small improvements and small changes. Because what that does is that shows your brain that you do have control. You can control the situation and what you do does matter. So, learned helplessness. If you saw a dog in a cage that was just getting shocked, wouldn't you help that dog? Okay, well, if you would help the dog, why don't you help the people around you? And why don't you help yourself?